Hey, Sean. My friend Allison asked me for some tips for shooting like maternity and couples photography and stuff like that, and she's not really done much of it before. So here are my 5 tips on how to shoot better photos when you're just getting started with this sort of thing. Number 1, get a shot list. And find inspiration. Go on Instagram or Pinterest or Google whatever, Google maternity shoots or engagement shoots, whatever. Look for photos that you like, photos that you're like, hey, that's an awesome photo. And then write them down. Make an actual list that you will take with you of 10, 15, 20, however many photos that your client wants. Make that list so that you can say, hey, I'm gonna get the close-up of their hands with the rings on it. Hey, I'm gonna get a big wide of them in front of some local landmark to establish where they are, and then I'm gonna get an over-the-shoulder looking down as they're holding hands. Make this list and then stick to it. And actually go further than that. During your shoot, have it scheduled out where if there's certain ones that are similar poses but different, focal lengths or different framing, put those together so that way if they're seated on a park bench, you can get all your park bench shots at once rather than like do all your medium shots and all your wide shots. The more you can do to minimize how much your subjects have to move, the easier it's going to be for you to get these photos. So make that shot list, number 1. And make it a schedule. But number 2, if you can, get someone to help you. And I don't mean like just holding reflectors or things like that. My photos are so much better when I have somebody, especially Jesse for photo shoots, to come and direct. And I'll say, here's the shot list. These are the photos I want to make, and give it to them and say, hey, you put them in the spot that they need to be for this, and I'm going to worry about the camera. And as the photographer, you're going to be trying to make sure your exposure is right, your focus is perfect, and you've got a bunch of little things that you need to worry about technically. And a lot of times I'll miss if somebody's collar is slightly messed up, or if somebody's half blinking, you don't notice it right away, or their hair is just slightly weird, or they've got a strap that's unaligned. There's a lot of things that can just look off, and if you're not looking for all of them because you're focused as a photographer on the composition and on the framing and all these things, you can find yourself later being like, oh, I don't like that photo, or worse, the client can be like, oh, my hair was sort of messed up. Why didn't you say anything? Or my tie was crooked. Why didn't you say anything? It's a lot to remember. So having someone who is completely absolved of anything camera related and can just focus on the people and their poses and help you go through your shot list and schedule efficiently makes a huge difference in my actual deliverable. Now that you're actually ready to go shoot, tip number 3, avoid eye level. And by that I mean your eye level, and especially if you're tall. Allison, who asked me for these tips, she's like 6'14" or something like that. But if you stand there and take a photo at eye level, they can look uninspired because that's how we all see the world. And so if people are sitting down on a bench, make sure you crouch down to get at their eye level or just below eye level. And while you're doing your research and your inspiration and making your shot list, look at those photos, and it can be easy to say like, oh, they're sitting on a bench. I'll take that picture. I'll take them sitting on a bench. But look at that photo and see where the camera height is. Like, take a look. Are they sort of looking up at them? Are they looking down at them? Are they dead on? Take note of that camera height because that actually makes a huge emotional difference in how a photo looks to somebody. Where if they're short and they look short in a photo, it sort of ruins the photo a little bit. And so try to frame things in a way where they look normal, and you do that by putting the camera at their eye level or just below their eye level if you want to make them look a little bigger, or just above if you want to make them look sweet and innocent and approachable. But there's a lot you can mess with to make that more impactful than you would get by standing there taking a photo at whatever height you happen to be standing. So crouch. If you're really short, stand on a box. Do whatever you need to do so that you can get the photo at the right level of your subject, not the photographer. Number 4, if you're watching this and these tips are useful to you, you probably don't have a ton of gear. And so you're using the sun and you're using some natural things. And my 3 little tips for lighting would be with the sun, don't put it where it's shining directly on the people's faces because they squint, and if they're not, then it can just look bad, and they get this like perfect flat awful bright lighting. And by the same token, you don't want to have it necessarily directly behind them, obviously in both of these situations, unless you're using it for an artistic effect. If you want the sun right behind them, shoot with the sun right behind them. But if you're trying to focus on something else and the sun is right behind them, unless you've got a great camera with amazing glass on it, sun going into the lens will actually sort of bounce around inside the lens. It'll ruin the contrast and a little bit of the color. Sometimes even if the sun is not on their face, because it bounces in the lens, they could end up with some big spots on their face, and you may be wondering where those are coming from. If you can use it for artistic effect, go for it. But the best, safest thing to do is put the sun somewhere on the side, because then you get not only no flares going into your camera, they don't have to squint, but also you get some shape to them where one side of their face is brighter than the other side, and it sort of rounds them out and adds some depth to the photo. So use the sun, don't make them squint, and don't flare your camera unless you're trying to. But third, use shadow. A lot of times if you can shoot underneath a tree, or like right now I'm shooting underneath my porch where there's a ton of natural light that's hitting me from everywhere, but it's not direct, and so I'm not squinting, it's not affecting my camera. And so if you're out in a park or something like that looking for a place to shoot, head for a tree. Put them up against the tree trunk where the leaves are giving you some natural shade, or look for a pavilion or any sort of thing where you can play with some shadows, because in the shadow your light is going to be a lot more even, and your photos are going to be a lot happier and a lot less squinty. And tip number 5, the last tip, overshoot. Especially when you've got, I almost hate this advice, but when you're doing it for a client, if you have your shot list of 15 shots and you get them sitting on a bench, you take 3 pictures, you say, okay, good, we got the bench one. The problem is you can go back later and it turns out those 3 photos, maybe one missed focused slightly, or maybe one they're sort of half blinking, or you notice that one of the pair looks really good and the other kind of doesn't. Take a lot of photos. So that way you have this insurance in there of hopefully one of them is good. And as you take it, ignore the pressure of the time, because you can feel rushed very easily, but instead go back through, look at the photos that you're taking and zoom in your camera. If you're using a digital camera, go back and zoom in to double check that they're in focus, that their eyes are open, and only then can you say like, okay, I know I have this photo, let's move on to the next one, or I know I have this photo, let's do one more little set just to make sure we're good, then we'll move on to the next shot. But that can make a huge difference. I've gotten back from shoots, and sort of the worst thing that can happen is you don't go in with a shot list, you just sort of go to a park and you're like, well, we'll take some here, we'll take some here, you guys stand there, I'll take some pictures, you guys stand there, I'll take some pictures, and then you go back, and based on what is actually in focus and where they're not blinking, you could end up with, yeah, the background's different in 3 photos, but it's essentially the same pose, the background just changes. So use that shot list and overshoot to make sure that you've got usable photos for every single thing that you set out to get, and you're going to be proud of what you did, your client is going to be happy with what you did, and then who knows, you might get to do it again. Thanks for watching, I hope this was helpful. See you later, bye.